Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now today I have a treat for you. I've got a couple of bonus puzzles. So I released a video a few days ago on an aquarium puzzle, which is a really beautiful puzzle that I hadn't seen before, and we solved it on the channel. And we had an email from Atanas Georgiev, who had also really liked the puzzle and happens to be a computer programmer. And he then wrote a program to create more of these aquarium puzzles. And he sent me a couple. So I've typed them into our software, and if you want to have a go at them, you can just click on the link under the videos, under this video, and yeah, there's 2 aquarium puzzles there for your enjoyment. And one of them even has my initials in it, so that's a particularly cool puzzle. Atanas is a veteran, I think, puzzle creator. He has a number of puzzle sites around the internet, including Puzzle Loop, which I visited from time to time, where you can play interactively things like Star Battle puzzles. So there's quite a lot of stuff there. I'll put a link to Puzzle Loop under the video too, so you can go and take a look. But we're not going to do an aquarium puzzle today. We are going to do a classic Sudoku, which has come in from one of our patrons on Patreon. Thank you, Matthew Turner, for being a patron, and I think thank you for sending us this puzzle, although I say that with some trepidation, because Matthew says that in light of his learning to solve more difficult puzzles from watching our channel, he went out and bought the biggest, hardest book of Sudoku that they had on the shelves, and this was puzzle number 1 in that book, and he says that he can't do it. It's monstrous, apparently. So he sent it to us. Now, I don't quite know how difficult this is going to be, therefore it might be, you know, unsolvable, but we shall have a go at it together and see how we get on. And if you want to have a go at the puzzle yourselves, again, I'll put another link under the video where you can click, and that'll take you to our webpage, where you should see something very like what I'm seeing now, and you can have a go on whatever device is your preference. And with that, I am now going to attempt this very hard puzzle. So, where should we start? Let's look at ones. Put a 1 into one of these squares. One of these 2 squares there, look. These 2 squares here. Threes, these 3's interact. That square must be a 3. Must be a 3 in one of those 2 squares. That's these 3's interacting. Looks a 3 over there. 4's into one of those 2 squares. 5's into one of these 2 squares. As always with Sudoku, the first stage is very much trying to build up a picture of the internal logic of the puzzle, noting down as much as we can in order to facilitate the later stages. 7's, 6, 6 must be in one of these 2 squares. Now that square, yeah, okay, so there's the first digit we're going to get, and that's simply comparing the contents of the column and the row. So I've done enough Sudoku that I suppose I'm reasonably proficient at spotting where there's big differentials between row and column contents. So my brain sort of sees this square as weak in the puzzle, and you can actually see that it's extremely weak. We've got 5 given digits in column 5 and 3 different digits that don't appear in column 5 at all in the row. That square, I think, has to be a 2. There's a 2 down there. Let's check the rest of this column now. We need 6, 7 and 8. So that one can only be a 6 or a 7. That one can be a 6 or an 8. Now that one can only be a 7 because there's a 6 and an 8 in the row. So that's a 7, that's a 6, that's an 8, and we have a column done. Now, get anything out of that. These 8s now force an 8 into one of those squares. These 8s force an 8 into one of those squares. Sixes, and this 6 means there's a 6 in one of those two positions. Yeah, and 9s, there must be a 9 in one of those two squares, which means, that square is a 9, therefore, because of this 9 here. Pencil mark 9's on the right hand side. We're looking at 9s here as well. Now there we go as well. That's a nice pattern. This comes up all the time and is one of the main reasons that I advocate using this pencil mark notation. It's very easy to spot this pattern when it comes up. You can see that the 9s now are locked into the same columns in two different 3x3 blocks. So we know in the finished solution there's either a 9 here and a 9 here, or a 9 here and a 9 here. Therefore, there cannot be any 9s in those squares. So the 9 in this box has got to appear in one of those three positions, and there's a 9 there. So, okay, it's not brilliant, but we get another pencil mark. And in very difficult puzzles, we have to take everything that we get given. So, 6, 9, 2s. And there's something, 3s. Now these 3s, look at the effect they have on this top left box. So there cannot now be 3s in any of those squares because of these 3s. Therefore, there's a 3 in one of those three positions. And you can see that that's going to coincide exactly with where I've got pencil marked 4s and pencil marked 6s. So what does that tell us about these three squares? If we know there's a 3 in there as well, that's 3 cells and 3 different unknowns that we know go into those squares. So they must form a triple on the numbers 3, 4 and 6. So these three squares, therefore, must be 1, 2 and 7 in some order. 1 there, so there's now a 1 in one of those two positions. That's going to give us a digit, but let's just check the 7s as well. That's not a 7 in that one. So there's a 7 in one of these two squares. 7's can be pencil marked down there. And these 1s point at that square, so this can't be a 1 anymore. Oh, that's good. We're going to get a 1 there and an 8, just unwinding our pencil marks. Now this 1 and this 1 interact on the middle 3x3 and force a 1 into that square, which means that's a 1 as well. And there's a 1 in one of these two positions. That's 8. And an 8 into one of those two squares. These two squares must be 5 and 7. And that points at that square, so that can't be a 7 anymore, so that one's a 7. This square is a 4 or a 6, and so is that one. Let's label that. 6. So now this square can't be a 6, so there must be a 6 either here or here. Okay, 7. Yeah, okay, so the 7s look locked into those 4 squares. Again, two different 3x3 blocks, 7s locked into identical rows of the grid. So the 7 in this 3x3 block must be in row 3, and there's a 7 here, so it must in fact be in one of those two squares. Right. What now? Aha, yeah, okay, look. 7, 8, 7, 8. So, can you see what effect they had? This these 4 cells have. They have a very profound effect on that column. Look, where can we put the numbers 7 and 8 in column 8? We can't put them in those 3 squares. We can't put it here because of this 7-8 pair. So there's only 2 squares left. So there is a 7-8 pair here. Now that must be helpful. So the first thing I'm checking here is whether or not, because I now know the numbers 7 and 8 are locked into 2 positions in a column, I always try, especially when these are not in the same 3x3 box, to look for an X-wing, look for an empty rectangle, look for a skyscraper, just to see whether or not any of those things are available. I'm not seeing anything. So let's have a look at the rest of this column then, because now we've effectively got 5 digits here. We need a 2, a 3, a 6 and a 9. So that square can only be a 2 or a 3 because there's a 6 and a 9 in the row. That square can be 2, 6 or 9, I think. That one can be, that one can only be 3 or 9. That one can't be 3 because I've pencil marked 3's here. So this one can only be 2 or 6. 6. So there's a 6 locked into one of those 2 squares. Let's just make a note of that. 6. Let's have a look at the central row here. We need 3, 4, 5, 9. Oh, bother. So that's a 4 or a 9. Not quite enough to deal with it all. That must be a 4 or a 5. 3, and that's 3, 4 or 5. Can't be a 9 because I've got the 9's pencil marked into these 2 squares, which was a result of those 9's earlier. So again, 2 9's here crossing the grid in row 5. Now, can we do anything with that? It doesn't look great, and the reason I say that is that I've got too many 9's already over on the left-hand side. Okay, this square is weak because, again, if we look at the 3, 5 and 6, they are not appearing in those squares. So that square can only be 2 or 4. Oh, there's a beautiful pattern there. That's lovely. So this is important. Let's highlight it. Have a look at those squares and note that there is a beautiful symmetry here. So we know the 9 is in one of these 2 squares, and we have a 2, 4 here and a 2, 3 here. So let's have a look at these and think about how they interact. So let's imagine this is the 9. If this is a 9, this square here has to be a 3, and this square here has to be a 2. So let's label that up. That's got to be a 2. If this is a 9, this is a 2. Now the only other state of existence that could persist is that this square is a 9. Now if this square is a 9, this square is a 4, and this one has to be a 2. So we know in the finished solution there's either a 2 here or a 2 here. And that means if there's a cell in the grid that sees both of these squares, and there are only 2 candidates, this one which already has a 6 in it, and this one which has a 2 in it, this square cannot possibly be a 2 because there's either a 2 here or a 2 here. So that square is a 6. Now that one can't be a 6 now, but I can see also this 6 sees that square. That can't be a 6 now. So this is a 6. And that means that's a 4. That's a 6. That's a 2. And we're off to the races again. So now that must be a 4 or a 5. And now I need to slow down because I don't want to miss any potential pencil marks. Although I don't know that we're going to get much out of this. There's 2 forces a 2 into those 4 squares. What am I missing? Sorry about this. This is always a hazard of the of trying to live solve hard puzzles when I get stuck. I'm not sure how to. I mean, we did get something out of that. We got the 6. That did give us a couple more digits, but I can't see how those digits are immediately telling us how to solve the puzzle. So let's have a look at this row because we've got 5 digits in it. We need 2, 7, 8, and 9. So that square is a 2 or a 7 because there's an 8, 9 up there. That square is a 2 or an 8. That's 2, 7, 9. That's 2, 8, 9. So we've got a number of squares here that are just pairs. Can we do anything with those? Now, hang on a sec. Let me just look at those squares a second. Right. Okay. Right. So again, the next step I've seen is revealed by focusing on a number that can only go in exactly 2 positions. This time the 1. If we look at the 1 in column 1, either here or here. Now, when I got the 2, 8 here, I noticed 2 things. Firstly, that interacts very heavily with the 1 in this box. Secondly, we've got 2 pencil marked 8s here. So we have what I like to call a sort of Schrödinger cell situation. It's this cell cannot be 2 digits at the same time. That's stating the obvious, but it wants to be 2 digits at the same time because look, if this square is a 2, then I know that because this square becomes a 1, that square down here has to be a 1. So if this is a 2, this is a 1. But if this is a 1, look, I've got pencil marked 8s in these squares. So by making this square a 2, I need to put an 8 in this square as well. Now this square cannot simultaneously both be a 2 and an 8. Therefore, it can never be a 2 in the first place. And that is nice. Now, that means this square is an 8. That one is not an 8. That one is not an 8. There's an 8 in one of those 2 squares down there. 9. This 8 sees this square, look. So that forces an 8 into that position, which in turn forces that to be a 9 from our pencil marks. And just check that, yeah, that's the only pencil mark I'm getting from that. Now we did some logic earlier that talked about, so once this is a 3, that square must be a 2. This square here can't be a 3 anymore. This square here is forced to be a 9. 4, 5. Again, I'm just desperate not to miss anything simple here. Not that this puzzle has felt very simple. 9, 9, 7, 8. So these 2 squares here must be 2, 4, and 5 in some order. This 2 is forcing that one to be a 9. That must be a 7, therefore. This one must be a 2. And are we on the right track now? 7, 7. That must be... This must be an 8. This must be a 7. This is not 8 anymore. Ah, not like that. If we look along, we need 1, 4 and 7 along here. So this square can't be a 7. That must be a 1 or a 4. Looks like it can be anything. That one can only be 4 or 7. 7. Still need a 3 into this box. Must be in one of those squares. 7 here. Oh, goodness me. Surely we're going to get... Must be 2, 4 or 5. This square is weak. We need 3, if we look at the row, we need 3, 4, 6 and 8. Now there's a 6 and an 8 there and a 4 there. Yes, that's a 3. Therefore, this hits this pencil mark, look. So that must be a 3, that must be a 1, that must be a 4. 4, 6, 3. 3, just unwinding pencil marks. This square must be 2, 4 or 5 now. Still not quite given up. 4 there, that's hitting that one. 7, that must be 4. This must be 1 and 5. Actually, I think I could have resolved that this square has to be a 1 earlier. That must be a 5, therefore. That means that one's the 2. That must be a 2. These two squares can't be 2's anymore. Wow, what a puzzle. 2, 5, 4. This is a 7 up here. That must be a 1. That resolves the 7 and the 5. There's now a 5 into one of those squares, marrying up with the 9. Look. 5. And these two squares at the top should be 2 and 6. Now that should be resolvable, yes. This 6 down here forces that one to be a 6. I hope I didn't miss anything easy there earlier on. That must be a 4. That must be a 2. The 4 and the 5. 5 and the 4 unwind. Therefore that one's a 9. That's a 5. And please don't have made a mistake. 8. Check. Yes. Wow. That was really, really interesting. That puzzle was a lot better than I thought it might be. The reason I say that is when I first looked at it, there was no symmetry, which suggested it had been created by a machine, and therefore you're always a bit at the the disposal of the algorithm. But actually, that was quite nice, wasn't it? We had the 3, 4, 6 triple up here, the 7, 8 pair here. And then the beautiful thing with the 9s going across there, and then the thing with the 1s going down here, and it was all, yeah, I enjoyed that. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what I missed. No doubt there'll be a whole litany of things. And yeah, we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.